I know we touched base a little bit on this while on the tour, but whenever finding these farms and trying to, from the chickens and the pigs, and then also you have a turkey supplier too?
Yes.
I guess initially whenever you were also just researching for that, how did you even go about that to try to find someone that you trust enough to outsource that? Especially when thinking of like a customer base and wanting to make sure they get the stuff that they want and deserve.
So the timing, it would have been very difficult, but the timing for us was pretty good because the Amish started moving into the area. And Amish, as a general rule, are pretty trustworthy. They have good morals. And they have a very strong agriculture background. And so they knew how to farm. They're open to anything pretty much as far as farming and selling to us. So it worked out good. They were eager to farm, and they don't have to deal with the internet or anything like that. So
Yeah.
that was a big plus for them. They could keep farming and not have to deal with technology. And so that was it fit really nicely for us. It was about the time we started growing. And as they kind of kept coming in, we kind of kept growing. And so it just, as one would come in, the next one would start for us and stuff like that. So that it would have been a lot more difficult if the Amish hadn't moved into the area.
Now, is there a big relationship like that overall between Mennonites and Amish?
It depends. In small communities like ours, like they're around us, I think there's only 15 or 16 Amish families. So it's a pretty small community. Now you go into Lancaster, there's thousands of Amish, and the Amish and Mennonites don't do quite as much together in there. But around here where they're starting a community, our community isn't really big. I think our church has 20 or 25 families. So we're both small communities, and so we do help each other a lot. Yeah.
What are some of the differences between Mennonites and Amish?
The biggest one or some of the biggest ones would be the horse and buggy. So they don't believe in vehicles.
Do you know the reasoning behind that?
I don't know that. The one of the bigger things is they don't want to forget what it was.
Because the foundation is the church, correct?
Yes, the foundation is the church. They don't want to be... I forget. I had asked one of them a long time ago what it was. And it's kind of one thing that they decided they don't want to... just decided they're not going to become part of. And there's so many variations of Amish.
Yeah.
There's some that if it's in a business name, you can own the vehicles. Like there's a lot of companies up in Lancaster that own the fleets of trucks, but they don't drive them. And so there's a bunch of little things in there that are inconsistent, kind of. And so I guess the Mennonites, we try to be a little more consistent. Like we don't feel there's anything wrong to own a vehicle. There's nothing wrong to drive. The internet and technology, they take a stand against. They have phone booths. There's Amish that are starting to carry cell phones. And so that's one thing. I know in Lancaster, like big communities, they're starting to deal with that a little bit. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do on the stuff like that. But that would be the big thing. A lot of around here, they don't have electricity, or they're not hooked into the power source. So the Mennonites would be fine with internet, with electric and vehicles. Is the main difference.
Then what does Mennonite mean for you, essentially, being a Mennonite?
So we would practice, we would be fairly strong on non-resistance. We wouldn't take arms. We take modesty fairly strongly. Like my wife would wear the head covering and wear a cape dress. And there was one other thing that I can't think of it now, but those are some of the things that would be the core of our belief. We don't feel it's quite as important to take a stand on things that don't matter so much. Like the internet, and it's kind of interesting in our church. So our forefathers would have allowed the internet, and some of us younger men are like pushing back on the internet now. We're not saying no to the internet, but there's so much evil on the internet that at some point I think you're going to have to say no to some technologies.
Yeah.
And so there's some of the young men that are standing up and be like, look, we're going to have to at some point. I don't think the right answer is like, cut it off, because there's so much good you can do with it. And so that's kind of like the Mennonites would kind of take the approach that not everything is evil. You can usually use stuff for good. The electricity, that's not a heaven or hell issue. I don't find anywhere in the Bible where God says you can't use internet and you can't use the electricity.
Yeah.
And so it feels like it's modern conveniences, but I don't feel they're, right or wrong issues.
No, that's why I asked, because I'm in complete agreement with you. I would think about that a lot being in Pennsylvania, and I remember there'd be times where I'd make deliveries, and just the horse and buggy thing I've just never understood, because I would see them going one way and I come back and they're still going that one way, and it's interesting. But then going back to the community aspect's huge. That's the one thing we always see online too for people that have never met Mennonites or Amish is how community driven they are, and then just hearing the story about after losing your father. Is that just due to just the strong core values and the foundation? Because that's like the one thing I always notice is just that huge community piece. Even just in North Carolina when they had the massive hurricanes, mm-hmm. There's still Amish to this day that have been building houses just for free. They've been doing it for almost a full year now. Mm-hmm. So why do you think that that's so strong?
That was actually the other thing I was trying to think of, is one of our core beliefs. But it's not really taught across the pulpit, so to speak. It's not preached about very often. It's more lived out. We just had, within the last 2 weeks, one of the Amish had a barn fire, and his new barn's already up. Everybody came together, cleaned it up. And
sorry, there's like the Family Guy. Have you seen the Family Guy? There's a Family Guy snippet that's literally that, to where the barn burned down. There's a bunch of Amish came and built it back up.
No, I didn't see that episode. I've seen some of his, but I haven't seen that one.
That's so funny.
Yeah. But we would take like Jesus' teaching to care for each other. There's a verse that says, do good to one another, especially those that are in the household of faith or something. So that's kind of where that would come in. And we do a lot together. Our church gets softball games together occasionally. Like on Friday night, anybody who can will go play softball, stuff like that. And we have issues. Like there's issues in our church, and we're dealing with some stuff now. And so once a month, the men in church get together, sit around, and discuss any issues that are happening. And sometimes there's not, but we still get together, and sometimes we'll go meet. Like just recently we went out for supper, stuff like that, just had an evening together. And now we're dealing with some stuff. And so you have 20 to 25 men that sit around a table. You have all these ideas, and there's one brother in church in particular that's struggling, and we're like, look, go find somebody else in the world that has 20 men that will sit around the table and pour their hearts out to help him. He's like, you're going to be very, very hard pressed to find that. Yep. Like the wealth in that is incredible. And so that's kind of, that's a strong teaching that we stick to.
Well, I love that, because to keep this strong community going, you have to be active like that.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy, kind of like whenever switching co-op and you just lost your operation, it's very easy to lose that sense of, in America, it only took a couple generations to where we don't really have community anymore. Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting to hear.